All right, boys, we are back for UFC Seattle this weekend. Let's pray that we can make it till Saturday without any more fight cancellations. This card has been cursed. We've had a handful of fights that have been canceled or completely scrapped. We got guys stepping up on 10, 6, 7, 8 days notice to make their debut against ranked opponents. It's a weird card. There's some good matchups. I expect some violence in this spot. You got Henry Cejudo in the main event. It should be a lot of fun in Seattle. But before we dive into breaking down these fights, UFC Vegas 102 last weekend, we profited 6 units. A pretty decent night. I mean, we hit Nazim Sajikov, we hit Angela Hill. The Jose Delgado fight to not go the distance was minus 175. That's a hammer spot. I mean, that didn't make it out of the first round. Same thing with Edmund Shabazian. We took that fight to end inside the distance, minus 185. Hammer spot. We took Edmund to win inside the distance, minus 140. First round KO. Can't ask for more. Like I said, a good night. Hit a few parlays too. But yeah, man, I'm not going to waste any more time on that. If you want to get all of my bets for free, we're going to give out a free code this weekend on Winnable. All you got to do is go to winnable.com/HOFpicks. Use code parlay. It'll get you a 5-day free trial. Get all of my bets free. Get all the Hey Jive Picks bets free. And let's make some money this weekend. All right, without any further ado, man, first fight on the card, Rafael Cerqueira taking on Modestas Bukauskas. Now, if you remember Cerqueira, or you're like, man, that name sounds familiar, like what happened? Was there controversy? He fought Aslan in his debut, and he was 11-0 at that point. Maybe a little bit of a can crusher. The guy has shown he's got some power, but if you remember, it's hard to find tape on this dude. It's hard to find his fights, so you didn't really know what we were going to expect. All we knew, he was undefeated with a ton of knockouts, a couple submissions. He's built. He seems like he's got good cardio. But he went out there and he took a big shot from Aslan, backed up to the cage, didn't throw a single strike, covered up, 850 unanswered shots, got TKO'd on the feet. And, terrible debut. Maybe it was the octagon jitters. Maybe he's never, felt that kind of power before, which is very possible with Aslan. This line is just, it makes me a little bit nervous here because Bukauskas is a guy who does have wins at the UFC level, but he's also a guy who's gone out there and looked really bad and kind of been a letdown in some spots before. He had an original stint in the UFC, got cut, came back. He beat Tyson Pedro, Zach Pauga, didn't finish Zach Pauga, the guy with no chin whatsoever, went to a decision with him, and then loses to Vitor Petrino by knockout in the second round, and then beats Marcin Prachnio. So the level of competition since he came back, not the greatest whatsoever. Tyson Pedro is 1 foot in, 1 foot out, ready to retire, and he did just that a few fights after this. Zach Pauga, I don't even know if he's with the promotion anymore. Never got that win, got knocked out a few times. And then Vitor Petrino, 2-fight losing streak, knocked out badly by Dustin Jacoby, submitted by Anthony Smith before that. Not the best look in the world there. And then Prachnio is your middle of the middle tier, light heavyweight. So hard to really gauge what this fight is going to look like. Because Bukauskas, dude, his original losses to get him cut from the UFC was Jimmy Crute. At that time, Jimmy Crute was fighting all of the top guys in the division. Mikhail Olazejczyk, who is a good boxer. If you fight him on the feet, he's going to make it close. I mean, look at the Shara fight. He landed a lot of significant strikes against Shara Bullet. And then he lost to Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree just fought for a title this past fall. So he's got high-level experience. He's got a ton of experience, especially compared to Cerqueira. I think Bukauskas should be well-rounded enough to win this fight. His striking on the feet is good. His grappling is good. Nothing great, nothing flashy. Cerqueira, if he can get the kickboxing going, if he can leg kick, use all of that, and keep the fight on the feet, I mean, maybe he gets himself a shot. It's just so hard to gauge judging off that first performance. I don't think you can look as bad as that. That's the thing. I don't think you can look as bad as he did when he went out there, didn't throw a single punch, and just got finished right away by Aslan. So I expect to see a little more resistance on his side. Bukauskas, you just never know. I wouldn't bet this fight. I wouldn't parlay Bukauskas. It's one of those fights you look back and just think, man, what was I thinking? Because Cerqueira, you just never know with guys like that. I'll take Bukauskas to win the fight for the pick, but I'm going to stay away from picking a side on the bets. All right, who we got next? Let me get this Tapology refreshed real quick. Oh, kind of out of order here. We're just going to go down the list. We'll go Nursultan Ruziboev versus Eric McConico. Ruziboev, he always holds advantage over guys at this division because he's 6'4", or 6'5", sorry, 76-inch reach for 185 pounds. 170 pounds. That is big. I mean, he is hard to hit. I mean, he's got a massive reach over guys. He's pretty decent with his striking. If you watch him on the regional scene, you'll see that this guy likes to get the fight to the ground. He's got a good submission game. He's got those long limbs. He can pull off chokes from every angle. But, once he's gotten to the UFC, he's kind of gotten to these striking exchanges with guys. I mean, went out there against Bruno Ferreira, didn't really have to use the grappling, just hit him with a big shot and then ground and pound TKO. Went over against Cedriques Dumas, same thing. Dumas claimed he got poked in the eye, but that was a nasty uppercut from Ruziboev there. And then against Buckley, I mean, you're not going to really go out there and wrestle Buckley successfully for 15 minutes. Buckley was fighting in front of his home crowd in St. Louis. Buckley is now 4 or 5-0 at welterweight. I mean, that's a tough fight. He lost it by decision. He had a few decent moments early in the fight, but nothing like too definitive to where I'm ready to write this guy off and pick against him against Eric McConico, who is making his debut. Now, McConico, when you watch him, he's an MMA Labs guy. He's 6 foot tall, 75-inch reach. So the reach is somewhat similar to Ruziboev. He's just 5 inches shorter. He's 34 years old. It's just a tough age to come into the UFC. I mean, a lot of these guys coming into the UFC and having long, very successful careers are coming into the UFC in their mid-20s and kind of working up their way, getting a lot of experience. But, I mean, he's drawing a guy in Ruziboev who just fought Buckley, who's looking at a title shot in his next 2 fights. So, this is a massive, massive step up in competition. When I watch McConico on the regionals, a few things stick out to me. His cardio seems decent. He can fight you really anywhere. I mean, I've seen him go out there and want to strike with guys. I think his fight IQ has been pretty good. I've seen him go out there and put guys against the cage and make them defend takedowns until they're tired, and then he gets his striking going. I've seen him land takedowns and has good ground and pound. We've seen him pull off 3 submissions in his pro career. But one fight that really impressed me was one against Maki Pitolo. Maki Pitolo is a very experienced fighter out of Extreme Couture. He's extremely, extremely tough. Like, the guy's chin is pretty insane. Yeah, he's been knocked out some and TKO'd, but it takes a lot to get him there. And Pitolo, made it kind of a grinded out dogfight in that first round, kind of slowed down a little bit, where McConico then went to the grappling, put him up against the cage, landed knees, elbows, did a lot of damage, finally landed a big head kick, which had him wobbled, saved by the bell, came in the 3rd round, and did something really smart that you like to see that shows that his fight IQ is pretty good. He didn't go for the wrestling. He knew his opponent was still hurt. So he went out there and he started working the body. He got him backed up to the cage, hit him with a big shot to the head, and then just started digging into the body, and Pitolo ended up falling, and that was the end of the fight. So I think McConico is a guy who can have success at the UFC level. I just wish he would have came in sooner, and now you're fighting Ruziboev, who's got that experience edge. I mean, he's got a ton of pro fights, has a bunch of losses, but, he's fought on a decent regional promotion. I think Ruziboev is just going to be too versatile. I think the striking is going to be tough for McConico. McConico. I don't think that he's really seen this level quite yet. And, if Ruziboev gasses out, maybe he leaves the door open for McConico to steal around here at the end of the fight, or even, potentially finish. But, if Buckley's going out there and not finishing Ruziboev, I don't think this 34-year-old on his debut is going to do so either. All those reasons, I'll take Ruziboev for the pick. But again, you just never know with these debuters, man. Sometimes they have their best performance of their life in their UFC debut. Like, look at Felipe Dos Santos against Manel Kape. Look at Steve Erceg. But other times, these older guys just don't really pan out. So we'll see what happens. It should be a fun fight. If you look at McConico and the way he fights, and you put it up against a style like Ruziboev, who can fight you all those places too, I think it's going to be a fun one. All right, next fight up, we are getting Ricky Simón, Javid Basharat. This is, I know a lot of people, like to compare the brothers. They compare the Bonfim brothers, that Gabriel Bonfim, who we saw submit chaos, is the better Bonfim than Ismail, who got finished by Nazim Sajikov. It's kind of the same way here. Javid's brother is Farid Basharat, who is still undefeated, who's looked very good in the UFC and is kind of on a tear right now. Whereas, Javid's kind of not falling on hard times. He just took his first pro loss against Ayman Zahabi. Zahabi's a guy who racks up some wins in the UFC, but it's just a frustrating loss when you watch it back, because Javid Basharat was faster, better all-around fighter, in my opinion. He just wouldn't let the hands go. He just didn't have any urgency. He was too patient, almost too cocky, And he went out there and he just let Zahabi creep around, stay in the fight, and next thing you know, judges are kind of swaying towards the Zahabi side. It was a very close fight. Thought it could go either way. But when you don't really separate yourself from some of these fighters that you should be far better than, you should be faster than, and have tons more volume, that's what's going to happen. Fighting Ricky Simón, though. Simón, I'm not really ready to write Ricky Simón off yet. I think he's got some fight left in him. This is kind of a home crowd, home turf situation for him. He's from Washington. This fight's in Seattle, Washington. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, but let's look at who he's lost to. Yadong Song, who's getting Henry Cejudo in this main event. Mario Batista just beat Jose Aldo. Mario Batista is now 15-2. Probably with a decent performance, decent win, can get into the title conversation. He's on a 7-fight win streak. So that was Ricky Simón's second loss in a row. And the third one was Vinicius Oliveira, who just went out and beat Said Nurmagomedov in Saudi Arabia in front of that was a home crowd fight for Said, and Vinicius Oliveira went out there and put it on him. So not a bad loss for Ricky Simón there whatsoever. Before that, though, beating Jack Shore by submission, Rafael Sunsao by knockout, Brian Kelleher, Ray Borg. The guy has fought some high-level guys. Rob Font, Uriah Faber, Ronnie Yaya, Montel Jackson got a win. He beat Merab Dvalishvili. Merab's last loss, Ricky Simón, this was 2018, 7 years ago, but, it just shows that if Ricky Simón can put it all together, he's definitely got the skills to beat guys, like Javid Basharat, who isn't the most dangerous fighter, who's very well-rounded and good everywhere, but Ricky is too. Ricky can wrestle, probably a better offensive wrestler than Javid. Ricky's going to hold more power in the hands. Maybe he's not as technical or as flashy with the spinning kicks and spinning attacks, but I could see Ricky, staying in this fight, just using the takedowns and landing more damaging shots here. So I'm not ready to pay this price on Javid Basharat coming off of that disgusting performance against Ayman Zahabi. So yeah, am I gonna take Ricky Simón for an underdog straight up? I don't know. It's iffy, but you can get those plus 3.5 spread bets, and all they got to do is win one round on the judges' scorecards. I think Ricky can do that. Mix that in with this being in Washington. I think you're looking at a bet that could definitely cash. So that's how I would play it. Give me the spread on Ricky Simón here, and don't be surprised if he wins outright as a dog. We're going to get into some fights here now where guys are making their debuts. Guys are coming off the Contender Series. Some of them promising, some of them I was not impressed with whatsoever, and this one being one of them. Mansour Abdul-Malik is taking on Nick Klein. You can probably guess which one I am impressed with and a little bit higher on than the other. Mansour Abdul-Malik has looked pretty damn good. He originally came on to the Contender Series, and he gets the win over Wes Schultz. Now, Wes Schultz, watching tape on him leading into that fight, I thought that Abdul-Malik would run through him and just knock him out in the first round or take him down and just beat him to a pulp. But Wes Schultz was able to hang around a little bit. Wes Schultz was able to get a little control time of himself with reversals and was able to sweep him. Just Wes Schultz doesn't really have anything else to offer. He's a decent grappler. He's not that athletic. He doesn't have any striking. And he's definitely was at a big strength disadvantage to Abdul-Malik, who is massive. This guy is muscle bound. He's powerful. He's strong. And he has that wrestling base. Mansour Abdul-Malik comes into his UFC debut and gets Dusko Todorovic, who, Dusko, all things considered, not the best chin, no grappling defense, but he's a good boxer. And Abdul-Malik was able to go in there and hurt him badly on the feet, finish the fight. So that's a good debut win. Now you're getting Nick Klein, a guy who he doesn't really remind me of Wes Schultz, but at the same time, he's going to look to get his grappling going. His striking is not very technical. It's not very powerful. He hasn't fought the highest level of competition, as a recent. And, going up against the guy in Abdul-Malik, where are you going to take Malik down? Probably not. Are you going to eat some shots coming in and trying to close the distance to get to that takedown? Probably so. Can he handle it? I don't really know. We've seen him knocked out before on the regionals to a guy named Dorhan Dokaj by ground and pound in round 3. I think from a cardio standpoint, Nick Klein is probably going to have a little bit better cardio, but I don't think it's going to be enough better or way better that he's going to steal rounds and late in the fight. I think he does probably get finished somewhere in the first, maybe early in the second round. And if he doesn't, I do think Abdul-Malik will win the first 2 rounds and then be just too tough to finish in that third. He's too strong to submit. I think if Nick Klein gets the back or something, Abdul-Malik's going to fight his way out of it. And then probably Nick Klein will end up on his back with a big dude who can control you and land good ground and pound. So I'll take Mansour Abdul-Malik for the win. Not real high on Nick Klein, but you never know, man. These are guys with not a lot of experience, and they're still very, very green. Next up, we are getting, all right, this is a good fight. This is a banger, one of the best on the card. Andre Fili versus Costa. I had higher hopes for Costa up until this point. He's 2-2 in the UFC. I mean, he looked phenomenal when he came out there against Austin Lingo. I mean, Austin Lingo is a good boxer, a very technical boxer, and Costa came out and hit him with 50 body kicks, had him hurt badly to the body. Austin Lingo, too tough for his own good. Austin just couldn't close the distance in the fight. Melk was able to fight him from the outside using his kicks, closing the distance, like, that having that car crash style a few times and letting his hands go and then jumping right back out to the outside, landing the kicks over and over to the body, mixed in grappling when he had to. But Austin Lingo is a guy who is not going to offer much resistance if he can't get into that boxing range. His next win, Costa's next win, was his last fight against Shailin Nerdenbeke, who is 39-11, and he was able to submit him in that third round. Now, leading up until that third round, it was kind of anybody's fight. Shailin landed a few takedowns, landed some big shots on the feet. Melk was landing a few kicks here and there. The one thing I've noticed with Costa is that if you can get in his face and hit him with the hands, he likes to back up and just throw kicks. He kind of forgets about the boxing, and he goes straight to kicks. It's almost a defensive attack. And I've also seen, against Steve Garcia, who he knew was a better striker and more powerful, he tried to hang on for dear life in that first round. He took his back standing, and he literally held on for 4 minutes, the last 4 minutes of that first round. And that was the whole entire first 5 minutes of the fight. It was extremely boring. Nothing happened whatsoever. And it just showed me that Costa doesn't want to get hit. He wasn't willing to take those chances on the feet. The second round starts, and Steve Garcia forces him into a brawl, drops him, gets on top, elbows from hell, busts him open, unconscious. Costa ends up trying to wrestle the referee, and it just, showed me that Costa isn't really willing to take big shots, and he turns into a different fighter if you can touch him. Like, if you can't touch him and he fights you from the outside and gets his kicks going and he starts flowing, he's very good. If he takes your back on the ground, he's got a good submission game. He's not the best wrestler in the world, but if you can put a little damage on him, I think he starts to fade and break. I mean, we saw it against Thiago Moises in his first fight. Moises had some good moments on the feet, but he got takedowns very easy in that spot. Steve Garcia, I just broke that one down for you. Now you're getting Andre Fili, a guy with way more UFC level experience than you. Andre Fili is a very well-rounded fighter. His striking has always been pretty good. He holds power in his hands, as he's got 10 knockouts on his record. He could get knocked out here by Costa if Costa lands that big shot early. But when I look at the record of Fili and I look at his knockout losses, I mean, Dan Ige is one of the biggest power punchers in the division and is very, very good with the boxing, super technical and crisp. The other one, Joanderson Brito, one of the biggest savages in the division, who is very scary and has a ton of finishing ability. Other than that, man, he's losing some decisions, some very close decisions at that. And some of his wins have been pretty damn good too. I mean, beats Bill Algeo by decision. Lucas Almeida finishes in round 1 with a nasty, nasty right hand. He lost to Nathaniel Wood by decision. If Nathaniel Wood's not going out there and grappling you, I don't really see Costa being able to go to that side of his game either. Kind of off topic there, but in the last fight with Fili, he fought Cub Swanson to a razor close decision where he got the split decision win. I mean, it was kind of an all-out war. Both guys had big moments. I liked what I saw from Fili as far as his durability in that fight. He, coming off of a bad knockout loss to Dan Ige, he went in there and 8 big shots from Cub. Cub is older, yes. Cub is a legend, but Cub also just went out there a few months ago and flatlined Billy Quarantillo in that third round. Billy's always been a pretty durable fighter. Guys can TKO him, but not many guys go out and flatline him, and Andre Fili was able to go out there and beat Cub Swanson. So, yeah, I just think Costa might look sharp in the first, but if he eats that one or two big shots, I think it becomes a different fight. And if he wants to try to go to the grappling, I think Fili is good enough to keep this thing on the feet or even implement the wrestling that he has in his back pocket himself and kind of pull away from this fight, especially as the fight goes on. So yeah, give me Andre Fili. He's kind of switched to the slight underdog. I believe he's about plus 100, maybe minus 105, plus 100 right now. I think it's a decent line. I'm gonna watch that line too and see if it gets a little bit bigger. Because if he becomes plus 120, plus 130, I think you got to hammer it. All right, next fight on the card. We got a couple good ones coming up too. This one should be fun. I don't know how long it lasts, but it's Iwan Cutelaba taking out Ibo Aslan. Now, Cutelaba is known for being a wild man. You look at some of his fights. I mean, look at the Magomed Ankalaev fight where, he was playing chicken basically, acting like he's wobbled, acting like he's hurt, just waiting for Ankalaev to close the distance so he can land a big shot. The ref wasn't buying it and stopped the fight, so they got the rematch where Ankalaev was able to put him out. Then he beats Devin Clark by decision, but then he gets submitted by Ryan Spann, submitted by Johnny Walker, finished by TKO from Kennedy and Zechiku, finishes Tanner Bozer in the first round via ground and pound, loses to Felipe Lins by decision, and goes to a split decision with Ivan Erslan, which I thought Cutelaba convincingly won that fight. I didn't think it should have been a split. But one thing he did show in that Erslan fight in his last time out was that his striking is getting a little more technical. He's not as wild as he once was. He doesn't go out there and spam 15 takedowns in a round and completely gas out. Like when he does that, he's going to lose to these guys that can hit you and have some power because he's going to get so damn tired. His hands are going to come down and his chin's going to be available to touch all day long. But if I see, Cutelaba come out here like he did in his last fight, this one gets a little more interesting. I just think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think Cutelaba has to go to the grappling here, and if he does that and burns himself out, might be screwed. If he does it successfully, he can bank a few rounds here or even find a finish of his own. But Aslan is very powerful. He's 14-1 professionally. All 14 of those wins come by knockout. He just got a third-round finish over Anton Turkali. After that, finishes Rafael Cerqueira, who's on the day or in the first fight on this card. Finished him in a minute. He's just very, very dangerous, and I do think he's getting better and better too. Like we watched him, he actually lost to Anton Turkali in Brave CF by submission in round 2, and when he got that rematch in the UFC, he stuffed all the takedowns. He kept it on the feet. He ate some big shots from Turkali, and eventually just landed that one that put the lights out in a very close fight, and he finishes it in the third. So those are good signs for me. I think he's improving. I think he's getting in better shape too. He was always super thick and very, very muscle bound, but now he looked a little bit thinner in his last fight. He looked more athletic. And if he keeps getting better and has improved, I think he beats Iwan Cutelaba here. I just think he finds that big shot. We've seen Cutelaba hurt a lot. We've seen him put out. I don't see why Ibo Aslan couldn't do so here. So that'll be my pick. I actually took Ibo Aslan when he was minus 130. Now he's creeping up. He's getting to be a little bit bigger of a favorite. He's minus 185. I did my job. I take a guy at minus 130. He moves to minus 185. Probably going to be minus 200, minus 220 by the end of the week. I can live with that. If he loses, I did my job, like I said. All right, let's get into the next fights here. Oh man, some of these fights though, the matchmaking is good, and there's going to be some fun ones. Even this one, like we're getting a debuter in here, and Julius Walker, who's going to take on Alonzo Menifield. This is Walker, who is 6-0, only been a professional since like 2021, and he's getting Menifield, who's ranked number 15 in the light heavyweight division. Like, what sense does that make? I mean, yeah, I know, Menifield needed an opponent. Julius Walker stepped in just on 10 days' notice. So last week, sometime in the middle of the week, he signed to the UFC. He was preparing for a fight, so it's not like he's going to be completely off the couch or anything. But, the experience edge is going to be massive for Alonzo here. Alonzo has been training mixed martial arts longer. Walker was a D2 collegiate athlete in 2018 or 19, I believe. So he hasn't really dedicated his life to this for that long. And also, Walker has been fighting way, way lower levels of competition than Alonzo Menifield. I mean, look, he fought Myron Dennis, who was a kind of a guy who could never crack it at the UFC level. But Von Lewis, same thing there. Niall Bartling, I believe, was on the Ultimate Fighter. He's kind of a grappler who, gasses out. He's big and isn't athletic or doesn't have the best striking in the world. Before that, Mike Cook, who was 0-3. Brian Porritt, 3-5. This big overweight guy that just should not be in there with anybody. and then in his debut fought 0-1 HD Esley. So fighting a lot of guys with not the best records whatsoever. When he was an amateur back in 2021, he took 3 losses in a single year to guys that aren't UFC level, who haven't really made anything of himself, or some of them aren't even fighting anymore. So yeah, maybe he's rapidly improving, but I also don't think he's met any resistance on in his pro career so far in that 6-0 span. Nobody that's been able to hit him. We saw in the amateurs when guys can hit him, he can be beat. And Alonzo Menifield holds a ton of power in the hands, but Alonzo Menifield also has shown in the UFC he can pull off submissions. He can get takedowns. If you watch Julius Walker, he likes to start on the feet a little bit, but he likes to just try to spear you into the canvas and land those takedowns. And there's been 3 fights that I watched that he's gotten caught in somewhat of a guillotine. It was never real close because these guys suck, but his head was definitely locked in for a minute. Alonzo Menifield has pulled off guillotines before and has a hell of a squeeze. So if that happens, I could see Alonzo Menifield submitting him. I could see him knocking him out, and I could see him banking those first 2 rounds. And then Julius Walker just never been into deep waters, especially against a guy who hits hard. And then Alonzo Menifield getting a decision. Can Julius Walker win this fight? Absolutely. Alonzo Menifield, not the best fight IQ at times. He's beatable. He's been beat. He's 37 years old. I just think the experience, the power, and the submission attack with the takedown, I guess defense. Menifield's not the best takedown defense, but his offensive wrestling attack could play a factor in this fight too. I'm gonna take Alonzo Menifield. I had to. I took the line at -160. He's now -235, 240. So again, I did my job. I caught these lines more to where they're accurate instead of when they're inflated. So that's who I'm taking in this fight. You got to kind of pray on this one though, because light heavyweight, anything can happen in this fight. All right, another banger. Gene Silva, Melsik Bagdasaryan. I love Gene Silva, man. One of my favorite fighters. He's one of the most entertaining fighters from a fighting standpoint, but also on the mic. His walks to the octagon, he's barking at dudes. This dude is a psycho, a certified psycho, and he fights like one too. I mean, who goes out there and beats up Drew Dober so badly that the doctor has to come in and stop the fight from bad cuts? I mean, Gene Silva was able to do that to him. Gene Silva went out there and whooped Charles Jourdain, which, Charles has his fair share of losses, but Charles never gets, just beat to a pulp and knocked out like he did in that fight. Before that, knocks out Weston Wilson, had a banger of a fight against Kevin Vallejos where he looks solid on the Contender Series, and then he's just murdering people on the regional scene. So I like Gene Silva a lot, but Melsik Bagdasaryan is a very good striker too. I have been a little let down with Melsik's power in the UFC. When you watch him when he was first coming up, this guy was landing knockout after knockout, first round knockout. He was so fast. His kicks are actually insane. His striking, he strikes at a very, very high level. But he gets on the Contender Series, goes up against Dennis Bazooka, wins by decision. Very good fight. Both guys were 4-1 at the time. Couldn't put him out. Comes in against Colin Anglin, does get the knockout, but then he fights Bruno Souza, unanimous decision. Fights Josh Kulabau, a good fight, and then he slips, and Josh Kulabau just jumps on the neck right away and submits him via rear naked choke. Decision against Tucker Lutz. I mean, come on, bro. And now he's getting Gene Silva. So if he can't knock out Gene Silva early in the fight, Gene Silva is going to work him, I think. I think Gene Silva, it's not that Gene Silva has insane cardio. I think he's just such a psycho that he goes out there and he disregards if he's tired or not, and he just throws. He bites down on the mouthpiece and he throws, and that's intimidating. So when these guys, especially these good strikers, want a nice technical fight and he's in there just brawling with you and cracking you and hurting you and cutting you up, it's hard to deal with. Not to mention, if he does get tagged on the feet or doesn't like what he's feeling against Melsik, I think the takedowns are free. I think Gene Silva is a good grappler. I think that's one part of his game we've really yet to see at this level that I think he is very capable of and definitely has in his back pocket. So if that happens, man, look out. Gene Silva could get a 10-8 round in this fight just from the takedowns and damage he does. But just be careful early for Gene Silva, and I think he should win this fight. Banger, though. I mean, 2 of these guys, good strikers. It's going to be fun to watch. Speaking of good strikers, Rob Font as an underdog here against Gene Matsumoto. Rob Font's currently plus 150 in a lot of the books, where Matsumoto is minus 180. Matsumoto's technically stepping in on short notice here. This is a tough fight for him, if I'm being honest. I mean, if Matsumoto comes out here and get the fight to the ground, that's probably his best path to victory Rob Font's takedown defense, not good. But I have noticed, Rob is good at scrambling and he makes you work when you're on top just by, getting in a butterfly guard or trying to push off to get back to his feet. And you've got to kind of anchor yourself down. It's exhausting. And Rob Font is very experienced. And while you're on the feet with Rob Font, we've seen time and time again, some of these guys who aren't very experienced, who have some hype. Look at Adrian Yanez. He went out there and Rob Font was able to just piece him up with that right hand. He was way too technical of a striker. His jab was way too good for him. That was a very, very good win for Rob Font. After that, he's fighting Corey Sandhagen, Davis, and Figueiredo, two of the top guys in the world. And after that, went on there and lost the first round against Kyler Phillips, and then absolutely whooped his ass when Kyler got tired in the second two. So Rob Font's a guy you can't count out, especially if this fight gets caught on the feet where Matsumoto can't get it to the ground. This one becomes very interesting, and Rob Font becomes very live. Because Matsumoto, while he does have good striking, he's got good technical striking, great low kicks. He's shorter, compact, and powerful. I look at the fight against Brad Katona, and Brad Katona was able to light him up on the feet as well at times. And Brad Katona, I've never been impressed with. He's honestly kind of an annoying fighter to watch. Gets so many decisions. I think all of his wins are by decision, and his striking is decent. He's short. He's stocky. His wrestling is decent, but he, finds ways to put guys against the cage, and, that's basically his game. That was a close fight against Matsumoto. I mean, Brad Katona hit him with an elbow at one point, and Matsumoto was wobbled. I even watched his debut fight against Dan Argueta, where, Argueta had a case to win that first round or the second round, and it wasn't until Argueta completely gassed out and Matsumoto was able to find the guillotine choke in that second round, right at the end of the second round, to where, that was kind of anybody's fight if that was going to hit the bell and go to the third. Argueta is a guy who's not UFC level and I believe has been cut since. So, I mean, is Matsumoto the truth? Is he a great fighter? Yeah, I think he's really good. He's 16-0 for a reason, and he's very young and he's getting better and better. But Rob Font is proven. Rob Font is a ton to deal with, and I think he can make this very, very close, especially if it stays on the feet. So I don't think you're going to finish Rob Font either. I don't think he's going to submit him. I think Rob Font's submission defense on the ground is going to be good. And I think he's going to be good enough with his jab to not eat a ton of big shots. I think it's going to be a lot of the low kicks he's got to look out for. So I'll take Rob Font for this. I'm just going to take the underdog here. I think it's underdog or pass. I mean, this is a more inexperienced guy against the guy with all the experience in the world. So will I be surprised if Matsumoto wins? Not at all. He's very good, but I just think there's value here. I think it's underdog or pass in this situation. All right, next fight. We're getting towards the end of them here. Oh yeah. We're getting Brendan Allen versus Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. You probably can't see it behind me. I got a Fluffy Hernandez signed glove. Props to my boy, the Mad Dodger on Instagram for sending it to me. It's on my display case. I love Fluffy. I like watching his fights. It's so entertaining to me to see a guy who takes damage and you think he's going to get put out of the fight, and the next thing you know, he's just ragdolling his opponents. I mean, we've seen it happen multiple times. Kopylov had him hurt to the body, and they get to the second round, Fluffy submits him. Michelle Pereira had him hurt badly in that first round to the body. Michelle gassed out after the grappling exchanges in that first round, and Fluffy Hernandez beat him to a pulp and then finished him in round 5. I wish that would have gone to the scorecards because it would have been like, there would have been like 3 10-8 rounds in a row. It was that bad. Fluffy beats Edmund Shabazian, Marc-Andre Barrio, Josh Frim, Rodolfo Vieira. He submitted the black belt snatcher himself, Rodolfo Vieira. His only loss not in the UFC, I guess, as of late, I guess, 2020, 5 years ago, that was his last loss, was Kevin Holland. Now, Kevin Holland is very long with good striking and has some power, and Kevin just landed a perfect knee in that first round, and that's kind of where Fluffy struggles. He's a little bit soft to the body. He can usually fight through it, besides that fight against Kevin Holland. Brendan Allen, on the other hand, I don't really think he has the striking capabilities to go out there and piece up Fluffy to a point where Fluffy is badly hurt and, drained and gassed and on the verge of being knocked out. I don't really see that happening from Brendan Allen. I do see Brendan Allen, maybe having success with the grappling and kind of trying to counter grapple with Fluffy, and it's kind of a wash, and then it comes down to a striking match, and maybe it's even on the feet there as well. But I do think that Brendan Allen showed that he suffers a little bit with the cardio. I look at the Nasruddin Imavov fight, and he looked great in the first round, landed the takedown. It wins the round easily and then just was gassed in that second. He was shooting sloppy takedowns, basically just diving at ankles, hoping that he could grab onto something. Wasn't able to do so whatsoever. And, Imavov was able to piece him up a little bit, had him hurt. I mean, Brandon never quit on himself. He never will quit on himself. So he's going to fight for a hard 15 minutes. I just think Fluffy's going to have more in the tank. I think Fluffy, from a wrestling standpoint, might be a little bit better. Both guys have great jiu-jitsu. I'll take Fluffy for the pick in this one. Main event time. Triple C, Henry Cejudo and Song Yadong. This one's a deceiving fight. I think everybody expects Song Yadong to go out there and just completely run through him. And, I mean, I guess it's a possibility. But, when I watched Song's last 4 or 5 fights, man, he went out there against Ricky Simone, and he looked phenomenal. But that's a Ricky Simone where if he can't get his wrestling going, he's not on the level of striking as Song Yadong. And Song got a nice finish in the 5th round there. Before that, he loses to Corey Sandhagen. Corey's one of the best in the world, and Corey has those sharp elbows where he was able to cut him open, and the doctor decided to stop it in round 4. Marlon Moraes, past his prime, washed, no chin, finishes him. Julio Arce, a decent fighter for sure, finished him in the 2nd round. Split decision with Casey Kinney. Unanimous decision over Cheeto Vera. Lost to Kyler Phillips. Draw with Cody Stamen. I mean, not the cream of the crop by any means. Oh, let's see. What was Chris Gutierrez was his last win, which was 2 years ago. And, it's kind of a boring fight. He would just take Chris down, playing his guard, beat him up a little bit, and that was it. Went somewhat of a boring fight. But the fight that really sticks out to me is his last one against Piotr Jan. And the thing that sticks out to me was that Piotr Jan's a striker. Yes, he's got good trips and he can grapple, but he's a striker. And Piotr Jan was able to land 2 takedowns on him. And towards the end of the fight, when he would get the takedown, Song wasn't getting up. He couldn't get up under Piotr Jan. He looked a little bit tired. And Piotr Jan did all of this with a torn ACL in that 1st round, or a PCL or MCL or something. Busted knee badly in that 1st round. And Jan was able to come back and still win that fight. And if he's landed takedowns on you, Chris Gutierrez landed a takedown. Ricky Simone landed a couple of takedowns. And Henry Cejudo, probably the best wrestler out of all of them. Not probably, is the best wrestler out of all of them. Yeah, Henry's 38 years old now. But, Henry Cejudo's never going to be a guy that goes out there and competes for 25 minutes on the feet with these guys like Song Yadong. But he's a guy who has so much experience. He's a guy who beat Demetrius Johnson, for God's sakes. I mean, the guy had an insane run at flyweight, moves up to 135, gets the belt, becomes double champ, Olympic medalist, gold medalist in wrestling. Like, this guy's combat sports resume is insane. I don't see how you can ever count out a guy like that, especially a Song Yadong, who it's not like he's like on an 8-fight win streak and he's unbeatable. We've literally seen him lose to Kyler Phillips, who just lost to Rob Font. I mean, we saw him lose to some guys on the regional scene too. He's been knocked out before. I think Henry Cejudo will struggle with the speed of the striking. Like, that's somewhere where Song's going to have to keep the fight there, and he'll be able to have success and land. But if this thing gets into the grappling exchanges early on, it might be very even. I'd say the 1st round and a half, 2 rounds, I think Song will be able to defend or work back to his feet. But if Song starts getting tired from all these grappling exchanges, and Henry Cejudo's been focused and dialed in and working on his cardio and can get takedowns in rounds 3, 4, 5, Henry's going to win the fight. I'm telling you right now, Henry will win the fight if he gets the wrestling going, and he is in better shape than Song as far as the cardio goes. If he's not, and he gets stuffed here and there, and just if you can see it on him that he's depleted and he's tired, yeah, Song should be able to keep it on the feet and just piece him up. I don't know if he can finish him, but he should be able to do enough damage to sway the judges. But I mean, Henry's last 2 losses, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. It's Aljamain Sterling, who was the champ at the time and one of the best 135ers ever with phenomenal wrestling and grappling himself. Henry's able to take him down. It was a split decision loss. A lot of people thought Henry deserved to win. The next fight, Merab Dvalishvili. Merab just went out there and worked Umar Nurmagomedov. I mean, Merab is nothing to hang your head about, especially at this point in Henry's career. If that fight was 6, 7 years earlier, that'd be a damn good fight, but it wasn't. So all I'm saying is don't count out Triple C, because the guy is where he's at, winning an Olympic gold medal, becoming double champ in the UFC, going to a split decision with Aljamain Sterling. Like, the guy is still a great fighter, and he's got the game to where he could wear down Song and steal rounds late. So just be careful. I think a Henry Cejudo split decision type of prop would be awesome to place and just see what happens, because I think it will be a lot closer than people think if Henry doesn't get knocked out early in the fight. That's the breakdown for UFC Seattle. Not the, I mean, this is a makeshift card. They had to throw this thing together. So many pieces, went missing, and they had to fill the spots. They did the best they can. I'm just excited we got fights. Again, coming off of a 6-unit winning weekend last week at UFC Vegas 102. I'm pumped for any fights they're going to give us. Ready to make some more money. If you want to get all of my bets, all the Hey Jive picks bets completely free, go to winnable.com/HOF picks and use code parlay. You'll get a 5-day free trial. Make sure to cancel if you don't want to stay on board with us after that 5 days. But I got a feeling we're going to cash this weekend, and you're going to like what you see, and you're going to become a member and stay a member and join our Discord of over 3,500 members and growing. So without any further ado, guys, good luck this weekend. I appreciate you guys being here. Hit the subscribe button, drop a like, drop a comment. Let me know who you guys like in the main event or any other fights that you guys like. Appreciate you guys for being here, and we will see you next week for UFC 313.